11, who is with Chris O'Donnell in Batman and Robin. Chris O'Donnell is with Sandra Bullock in Love and War.
And Gravity, starring Sandra Bullock with George Clooney.
Going back to George Clooney. Then we're going George Clooney back to Nicole Kidman in The Peacekeeper. Nicole Kidman was with Tom Cruise in Days of Thunder. Tom Cruise was with Jeremy Renner in the Mission Impossible movies. Jeremy Renner is an archer like Legolas. Legolas was in The Lord of the Rings, directed by Peter Jackson.
I think you have something.
I'm tired. Yeah. I'm tired. All right, but yeah, so what were we talking? We were on to something good, weren't we? We were just talking about something pretty great.
I thought we were talking about Teen Wolf.
Yeah, wait, no, shoot. No, wait. Oh, no, Ebert. So this is what Ebert had to say about it. He said, incredible the amount of work that went into the Frighteners, and appalling anyone who appreciates special effects, computer animation, or movie makeup will regard this movie with awe. But there's not a shot that doesn't suggest infinite pains and patience, which is true. Complex makeup was painstakingly applied to actors for shots that were then married to special effects in order to create a screen filled with gory images. But then he wrote, last year, I reviewed a 9-hour documentary about the lives of Mongolian yak herdsmen, and I would rather see it again than sit through The Frighteners.
Damn.
He hated The Frighteners. He'd watch yak.
He watched a 9-hour documentary about yak, Mongolian yak.
Yaks are pretty big, and Mongolia is pretty rocky. That'd be an interesting job to be a yak herdsman.
Is that like a 9-hour film worthy, though?
I mean, 9-hour documentary?
I don't know if I could sit there.
Are you just watching yaks walking for 9 hours? Because I'd do that.
I mean, yeah.
It'd be a good, like, put on your TV. Like, you know when you watch Nick Offerman drinking whiskey in front of a fireplace during the holidays? You could just watch yaks walking for 9 hours. It'd be a good screensaver for your TV. But yeah,
I got this from the documentary.
I could see how people do not like this movie.
Oh, totally. I absolutely see why people wouldn't like this. They don't know how, some people can't handle it because some people, I mean, I've had friends that don't like horror comedies because they just can't comprehend it. You know, believe it or not, I've met people that don't like Shaun of the Dead.
Say what?
Yeah. Get out of my house.
No. Go hurt some yaks.
But it's just, it gives you, like, it's very good of both sides of the equation. Some people, I mean, I've had friends that don't like it. They didn't like the Evil Dead series because of the hilariousness of it, but it's so horrific at the same time. So it's kind of hard to judge about how you would like it, but I love it.
Yeah, no, and I just think it's just, it's a weird movie for sure. But I know, I just love, seeing Michael J. Fox as a action hero, or, you know, a hero. You don't get to see that much in these kind of roles. And so I love that. I just love how this is a very different movie as well, too. We've already talked about this a lot, but I think it holds up so well is because it has a personality to it.
Yeah. People, I think over time, people probably grew more of an appreciation for it. And it doesn't really have like a nostalgia feel to it because there isn't anything that really dates it. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times when you watch movies, they become dated, even if they weren't trying to, like, say, for instance, Jurassic Park, one of my favorite films of all time, but it's very dated because you can see the way it looks and everything looks dated. Whereas with this movie, everything is kind of just like that could happen nowadays.
They kind of made it dated. They had a hard time finding, American-made cars in New Zealand, so they used older ones, and so they used. I think they gave it a really timeless vibe, and also before we move on, the gigantic hellworm.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, I love that.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. I mean, I love how that was the interpretation of dragging people to hell. It wasn't like a demon coming out and being like, "Wah!" It was more like there's these serpents that come out, and then the serpents have serpents inside of them. And I love how in the I think it was in the documentary that he talks about how the reason why the snake actually goes into Jake Busey's eyes and then into its mouth is because the way he was screaming on the blue screen, that it just kind of, he was like, yeah, we could probably put a snake in there. They decided to add that, which was a nice little touch.
Oh, that's cool. And do they grab everybody and take them to hell?
No, it's only Jake Busey and
because he escaped.
No, well, no, they were going to hell anyways.
Yeah, but how did he escape from hell? Remember, he said, "I escaped."
Yeah, I think they just kind of dropped that off there.
Yada yada yada.
He's like, wait a minute, how did you get out of hell? And he's like, well, you know, I mean,
there's a door.
Someone needed pizza.
No, honestly, guys, there's a door, and no one walks through it because they don't think it's real. I walked through it and I was out.
I proved them wrong.
I called their bluff.
I'm making Roadhouse too, right?
Yeah, well, there's 7 million doors, and if you pick wrong, it's hell. But you're in hell. So I walked through as many as I can. I went through some terrible things. Oh boy.
One wasn't that bad though. I mean, I won't do it. I opened it. It was a bunch of pineapples.
Yeah. I had to watch Cheers reruns. It was awesome.
Tony Danza was there.
I said, Tony Danza, why are you here?
I don't know. I said, why are you doing an impression of
Sylvester Stallone? Man, poor Tony Danza. And he's like, but it turned out it wasn't Tony Danza. It was all an illusion. It was weird.
It was a Tony Stanza.
Yeah. One time, there was a room that was full of bagels, but they were 2 days old.
There was no toaster, and there was no microwave.
I mean, so I ate them. My mouth was dry, and they weren't too good. So I guess it's supposed to remind you of real good times and bagels. But yeah,
It would have been fun of cinnamon and raisins.
Yeah. Not 2 day old though. But I love how he just said, "Yeah, they'll let me out."
Yeah, well, he was like, oh, I escaped, and it's like, wait, what? How did that? Who did you have to take out though?
I want this story.
Yeah, right.
Like
maybe that would have been Frighteners too if this didn't lose so much money.
Isn't that Drive Angry where Nick Cage escaped from hell in a car?
Yeah.
Maybe
that movie's great. I don't care what anybody
Maybe he
says.
took off.
I wish I saw that in 3D.
Well, that movie knows what it is.
It's called Drive Angry.
Yeah, exactly. It's yeah, and so yeah, I just hung out with that.
It's like whenever you watch Hobo with a Shotgun. Oh, that movie was stupid.
Well, come on now.
Like Rutger Hauer's a hobo with a shotgun, and you were expecting what?
Rutger Hauer. But also, I guess we'll talk about one more thing. I love when Dammer says, "This is me with an Uzi." I love that.
Yeah, he just pulls out a gun. Like I was like, I mean, how more ridiculous can we get it? Like more bigger guns, bigger ridiculous. And then whenever what was it? Whenever they're trying to escape. And then she goes off to the side. Dammers has Michael J. Fox by gunpoint, sprays him with the fire extinguisher. I loved how it was so cartoonish too, because he's like whoa, and like flailing his arms around, and then hits the ground, kicks him twice, gun goes flying in the air, catches it, and then it's that world that they built, and I kind of love that. It's very slapstick, and I like that.
And then I also thought it was interesting behind the scenes is that day where they shot the funeral in the beginning, Peter Jackson said that was one of his worst days ever. Filming ever.
Really?
Yeah, because he said basically this was a day where we had to film in rain. It was freezing the entire day. We just couldn't really get it right because it was during the opening credits, so they just had to get a bunch of stock shots. Nothing beautiful.
Yeah, that's right.
So they're just knocking out a ton of shots that don't look great. It's raining. And then they had to go shoot somewhere that night where it was still raining. And for Peter Jackson, after working on all these low-budget movies with blood and I mean, New Zealand, like he had to work on Secret on Meet the Feebles because they took all his money away. So he just did it by himself.
Well, but bad taste.
Yeah, bad taste.
Shot that over a period of like 4 years.
So for a guy who has had probably some terrible days on set, to say that day is one of his worst days, that's crazy.
Man. On the documentary, he talks about how, like, remember his cameo?
Oh, yeah.
He plays the guy who bumps into Michael J. Fox, and he's like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah, he has the shirt with the Reaper.
Yeah. And he's like, he said they shot that scene, and then they had the local news station was there recording them as they were doing it, and he didn't like he was like, well, couldn't you have picked a day where I'm not dressed in this outfit? So you see like this like punk rock. He's supposed to be like a gutter punk type of guy dressed up, and he's the one who's showing everybody what to do and everything. And they're just like, and here's the director, Peter Jackson. This is his first big budget thing. So it's like, oh, damn it.
He's looking like that.
Yeah. He wanted to look a little bit more presentable, but yeah.
And then also there's another scene. Oh, so it turns out that Michael J. Fox's wife was killed because of the two of them. She put a tree in the road. Right?
Yeah,
and then they fell down.
They decided to write that off because I guess it just wouldn't work, or I forget what the reason being. But yeah, it's like, yeah, that part, I guess it would be like, well, then how are they going to fall in love at the end?
And then they had a box cutter.
Yeah, and then she steals the box cutter. Because
he had 7 blades, and then but this is after she was cutting people's heads with the box cutter. So
it wouldn't make much sense.
Yeah, so that was a kind of so this scene has some things that are just thrown in there. And Peter Jackson does admit to that. He'll say in the beginning, yeah, this was a red herring. Like, yeah, we did that, but then kind of whatever. Yeah,
it's kind of like when James Cameron talks about, Kyle Reese being, the father, and they're like, oh my God, there must be some significance in this. And he's like, well, no, it's just kind of a cool idea. And as long as there's no further questions, that's it. Yeah.
And then one more thing is, 2 more things. They hijacked a computer code to get the Reaper. Isn't that pretty interesting? So that guy, he used more of a hack than a code. He was like, we would hijack parts of data so we could do very specific things with it. So that's kind of the beginning of really helping Weta. They just hijack code to make it seem cooler. And then Busey was talking about how behind the scenes, he's like, one day he offered to do some moves on tape for them for the Reaper. So he did some of the Reaper's moves, which they could reference when animating the Reaper's physical movements. So they filmed me, he says. And I don't know how much of it they used, But I can tell you, when I saw Lord of the Rings, I thought, well, now those ring wraiths look kind of familiar. So if you think about the ring wraiths and then the Reaper, I mean, they were practical, but there were some movements in there that's pretty interesting to see.
And on the making of documentary, they even have him, they're showing like how they could have created the Reaper, because originally he was supposed to be a practical effect.
Yeah.
And can you imagine doing that? Oh my Lord.
Just so much.
Oh. So they had it was like a tall, I think it was like not like abnormally tall, but like a 6-foot guy, and he had like sticks that he was like a puppet. And he was, so he would run, and then he would shake the sticks. So it looked like he was kind of like floating. I guess you'd say like almost like, I don't know, like how you would imagine if a jellyfish could actually float in the air, but not like smoothly, more like kind of. And that's what it looked like. So they didn't like that. So they only used one scene where it was the practical effect, which was whenever the Reaper is on top of the car and they're driving, and it's actually like it's a real cloak that's floating, and it's a real quick shot. You can't even tell. But
they said doing cloth was really tough.
Of course.
And I like that they said that originally they had fingers, but then they made the cloth have the fingers.
I love that too. Cool. I love that idea.
That was a good workaround. Like the cloth. So then when he takes off the cloak, you're like, oh, it was just a cloak over Busey. But why was he that mud man when he got squished in his face and then he was that blob?
I guess because he got blown up to so many different parts. It's just kind of, I guess, like thinking about it, if you really did do that to someone in real life. I've never done this, obviously.
Hope not. Chris Kelly.
Case number 42.
That was not a good day for me. And it came back.
Well, like, I imagine...
Never blow up a ghost. When you blow up ghosts, they turn into blobs. It's terrible.
Blobs, which is kind of like melted plastic. And when you think of plastic, think of Chris.
Chris Plastic Kelly. Graduating. Oh, yeah. Who is this guy? Stay tuned for case 45.
Why do I not trust him anymore?
I saw him kill a ghost. An innocent ghost. And since there are no laws for this, because that doesn't exist, he got away with it.
It was the 90s. We had a shootout at a museum.
And he destroyed millions of dollars of artifacts. Yeah.
I hope you didn't want to see that vase anytime soon.
Well, this was the last thing from the Egyptian culture. We blew it up. All right, sorry, go ahead.
So, like, I mean, if you had like two machine guns like he used and just blasted the piss out of someone,
turned into jelly,
I would imagine.
Yeah,
that's probably what they were going with. And then of course you can't actually. Now actually we're talking about this. This brings up a good point because so the judge shot what's his name?
Stewart.
Shot Stewart, and that caused damage.
Yeah,
but he blasted apart. Michael J. Fox blasted apart Busey. And then he comes back and he's back together as one. So wouldn't that actually have really killed him?
Yeah, that would have killed him.
And they were both ghosts. So
yeah.
What is it? Was it like a hierarchy thing? Like a seniority thing? Like
well, it did escape from hell.
Yeah, that's some
bragging. So maybe he got the yada yada.
Yeah.
The yada yada amulet.
Maybe they cut him some slack.
Maybe he stole something from Ra, the Egyptian god or Egyptian guy. And he stole an amulet.
Okay, because I was yeah.
I mean, I still love it. I didn't even think about that until today.
I didn't think about it either until we brought up the plastic thing.
Chris Plastic Kelly. All right, so you have a couple movies to recommend before we take out of here, right?
Yeah,
get out of here, right? What do you got?
I like to reference a couple of movies that if you do watch the movies that we're talking about on here, that you could, if you want to watch a movie that would go along with this. I found this movie when I was on Tubi. I was looking for another film, but I saw this and I was like, whoa, this looks pretty interesting. It's actually streaming on Amazon Prime right now. It's called Dark Night of the Scarecrow. It's a 1981 TV film. It's not really starring anybody that I think is notable. The guy who played the dentist in the movie The Dentist,
hey.
he plays the mentally challenged guy in the beginning of the movie, but that was it. Like, and then other than that, but the basic premise is that this mentally challenged gentleman supposedly kills this little girl, just like of Mice or Men. Rather than going through trial or anything, the local townsmen get together. They grab their pitchforks, their shotgun. Apparently, they live in the town the Simpsons live in. They strap him to like a pole and they shoot him and kill him. Those guys go on to trial. They're found innocent because there wasn't anyone to witness this. So they're like, okay, prove that we did it. Prove that we didn't. And then they get off on it. So then this scarecrow then starts appearing And it's the same size as the mentally challenged man. He's very strong, and he starts terrorizing these men one by one. And they each die